The ship came down from the sky like a giant silver bird. It landed softly on the green grass outside the Grand Palace of New Geneva. Thousands of humans stood behind the metal barriers, watching with wide eyes. They had never seen an alien ship this close before. The door opened slowly. First came the guards. They were tall creatures with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black, like deep pools of ink. They wore golden armor that shined in the afternoon sun. Each guard carried a long staff that glowed with strange energy. Then she appeared. Empress Ilthera of the Valari Empire. She was beautiful in a way that made humans feel small. Her skin was the color of moonlight. Her hair flowed down her back like liquid silver. She wore a dress made of fabrics that seemed to change color with every step. On her head sat a crown of floating crystals that circled slowly around her skull. Ilthera walked with her chin held high. She did not smile. She did not wave. In her culture, showing emotion was weakness. An empress must always appear strong, always perfect, always in control. Behind her came more guards, and behind them, almost hidden, was a small hover chair. In that chair sat a young alien girl. Princess Navari was 17 cycles old. She had the same moonlight skin as her mother, the same silver hair, but her eyes were different. They were not cold and proud. They were sad, so very sad. Navari had been born with legs that did not work. The doctors did not know why. They tried many treatments. They tried surgery. They tried genetic correction. Nothing worked. Her legs remained thin and useless, hanging from her hover chair like forgotten things. In Valari culture, this was the greatest shame. The Valari believed that worth came from physical perfection. A leader must be strong. A princess must be flawless. Navari was neither of these things. So her mother hid her. For 17 cycles, Navari lived in the back rooms of the palace. She was not allowed to attend public events. She was not allowed to meet dignitaries. She was not allowed to be seen. Her mother told her it was for her own protection. But Navari knew the truth. She was an embarrassment, a stain on the perfect image of the Valari throne. But this summit was different. It was the first peace meeting between the Valari Empire and Earth. Ilthera needed to bring her family to show good faith. So for the first time in years, Navari was allowed to leave her rooms. The Grand Palace ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Long tables held foods from 100 different planets. Musicians played soft music in the corner. Humans in fancy clothes mixed with aliens from 6 different species. Empress Ilthera moved through the crowd like water. She shook hands. She made small talk. She smiled the cold, careful smile of a politician. Everyone wanted to speak with her. Everyone wanted to be close to her. No one noticed Navari. The princess sat alone in the far corner of the ballroom. Her hover chair was positioned behind a large plant, almost completely hidden. Her mother had told her to stay there. Do not speak to anyone. Do not draw attention. Just sit quietly until the evening ends. So Navari sat, and she watched. She watched humans laugh with each other. She watched them touch arms and shoulders. She watched them move close together on the dance floor, spinning and swaying to the music. They seemed so free, so comfortable with each other, so happy. Navari had never danced. How could she? Her legs did not work. And even if they did, no one would dance with her. She was broken, defective, worthless. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, hoping no one saw. But someone did see. David Park was 24 years old. He worked as a waiter at the Grand Palace. It was not a glamorous job, but it paid well, and he got to see interesting things. Tonight was the most interesting night of his life. David carried a tray of drinks across the ballroom. He had already served 3 alien ambassadors and 1 human president. His feet hurt. His arms were tired. But he kept smiling because that was his job. Then he saw her. The alien girl in the corner caught his attention immediately. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she was alien, though that was remarkable too. No, David noticed her because she looked exactly how he used to feel at school dances. Alone, invisible, forgotten. David stopped walking. He looked at the girl. She was crying. His manager had given strict instructions. Do not approach the royal guests unless called. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact longer than 2 seconds. Breaking these rules could cause a diplomatic incident. Breaking these rules could start a war. David thought about this for exactly 3 seconds. Then he walked toward the girl. Navari looked up when the shadow fell over her. A human male stood in front of her. He was tall but not too tall. He had dark hair and kind eyes. He wore the simple black uniform of the palace staff. "Hi," he said. His voice was warm and friendly. "I am David. Can I get you something to drink?" Navari blinked. No one had spoken to her all evening. No one had even looked at her. This human was either very brave or very stupid. "I am not thirsty," she said quietly. Her English was perfect but heavily accented. David nodded, but he did not leave. Instead, he looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the dance floor. Then he looked back at her. "Do you want to dance?" he asked. Navari felt her heart stop. She must have heard wrong. "What did you say?" "Dance." David pointed at the couples moving together on the floor. "Do you want to dance with me?" "I cannot dance," Navari whispered. "My legs do not work." David shrugged. It was such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. "So, mine work fine. I have enough for both of us." Navari stared at him. In her entire life, no one had ever said anything like this to her. No one had ever looked at her broken legs and shrugged like they did not matter. Across the room, Empress Ilthera turned her head. She saw the human waiter standing in front of her daughter. She saw him extending his hand. Her blood ran cold. What was this foolish human doing? She started to move toward them. Her guards noticed her distress and reached for their weapons. But before anyone could stop him, David Park smiled at the princess and said 5 words that would change the galaxy forever. "Come on, it will be fun." And for the first time in 17 cycles, Princess Navari reached out her hand. David took Navari's hand gently. Her skin was cool and smooth, like touching polished stone. She trembled slightly, either from fear or excitement. Maybe both. He looked into her eyes and smiled. "Trust me," he said. Then, without any warning, he bent down and lifted her from the hover chair. Navari gasped. No one had ever lifted her before. Not since she was a small child. Her people believed that touching a disabled person was degrading for both parties. So she had spent her whole life being moved by machines. Cold metal arms. Programmed hover chairs. Never warm hands. Never human contact. But David held her like it was the most natural thing in the world. He positioned her carefully against his body. One of his arms went around her waist, strong and secure. The other hand held her hand up in the classic dance position. Her useless legs dangled between them, her feet barely touching the top of his shoes. "Put your other hand on my shoulder," David said softly. "I have got you. I will not let you fall." Navari did as he said. Her fingers gripped his shoulder tightly. She was terrified. She was thrilled. She did not know what she was feeling anymore. The music in the ballroom was slow and beautiful. It was an old Earth song about love and starlight. David began to move. He stepped forward. She moved with him. He stepped back. She followed. He turned slowly, and she turned too, held safely in his arms. Her legs swung gently with the motion, no longer a source of shame. Just part of the dance. See? David whispered. You are dancing. Navari's eyes went wide. He was right. She was dancing. For the first time in her 17 cycles of life, she was actually dancing. A sound escaped her lips. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was a laugh. She was laughing. The sound was so strange to her own ears. So foreign. So wonderful. She laughed again, and this time it was louder. She threw her head back and laughed like a child who had just discovered something magical. David laughed with her. He spun her around faster, and she squealed with delight. The crystals in her hair caught the light and scattered rainbows across the floor. By now, the entire ballroom had noticed them. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Drinks paused halfway to lips. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the human waiter and the alien princess spinning together on the edge of the dance floor. The Valari guards moved forward. Their hands gripped their weapons. Their black eyes were filled with cold anger. This human was touching their princess. This human was making a fool of their empire. But Empress Ilthera raised her hand. The guards stopped immediately. Ilthera stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom. She could not move. She could not speak. She could only watch. Her daughter was smiling. Not the small, polite smile that Ilthera had trained her to show. Not the empty expression of a broken girl pretending to be okay. This was a real smile. A true smile. A smile that lit up her whole face and made her look like a completely different person. Ilthera had not seen her daughter smile like that since she was 3 years old. Before the doctors told them about her condition. Before the shame began. Before Ilthera made the decision to hide her away. Something inside the Empress cracked. It was small at first, like a tiny fracture in glass. But it was there, and it hurt. On the dance floor, David dipped Navari dramatically. He bent her backward until her silver hair nearly touched the ground. She shrieked with surprised joy, grabbing his neck with both hands. "Do not drop me," she said, but she was still laughing. "Never," David promised. He pulled her back up smoothly and continued dancing. Around them, humans began to applaud. It started with one person. A young woman in a blue dress who'd been watching from nearby. She started clapping, her eyes wet with tears. Then another person joined her. Then another. Then another. Soon, half the ballroom was applauding. Humans cheered and whistled. Some wiped tears from their eyes. They did not know the full story of the princess and her hidden shame. But they could see two people sharing a beautiful moment. And that was enough. The Valari did not applaud. They did not understand what they were seeing. In their culture, this moment should be humiliating. Their princess was being handled like a puppet by a servant. Her broken legs were on display for everyone to see. But she was happy. Why was she happy? The song ended. David slowed to a stop. He was breathing hard from the effort of holding Navari for so long. But he was smiling too. He looked into her eyes. "You are a wonderful dancer," he said. Navari shook her head. "You did all the work." "That is not true. Dancing is not about the feet. It is about the heart. And your heart was dancing perfectly." Navari felt tears forming in her eyes again. But these were not sad tears. These were tears of gratitude. Tears of joy. Tears for a moment she would remember for the rest of her life. David carried her back to the hover chair. He set her down gently, making sure she was comfortable. Then he stepped back and bowed deeply, exactly like she was the most important person in the entire galaxy. "Thank you for the dance, princess," he said formally. Navari wiped her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The words felt so small compared to what she really wanted to say. David smiled that warm, easy smile of his. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Navari blinked. "Tomorrow? The summit lasts 5 days. That is 4 more dances. If you want." She stared at him. This strange, wonderful human. He was treating this like a normal thing. Like dancing with a disabled alien princess was something he did every day. "Yes," she said quickly. "Yes, I would like that very much." David nodded. "Then I will see you tomorrow." He straightened his uniform, picked up his abandoned tray of drinks, and walked back into the crowd like nothing unusual had happened. Navari watched him go. Her heart was still racing. Her cheeks still hurt from smiling. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before. Across the room, Empress Ilthera finally found the strength to move. She walked slowly toward her daughter, ignoring the stares of the other guests. When she reached Navari, she did not know what to say. 1,000 words filled her mind, but none of them seemed right. Finally, she spoke. "Are you all right?" Navari looked up at her mother. There was something new in her eyes, something that had not been there before. It looked almost like hope. "Mother," she said softly, "he made me dance." Ilthera swallowed hard. The crack inside her grew wider. "Yes," she said. "I saw. No one has ever done that before." Navari's voice trembled. "No one ever thought I could." The Empress did not answer. Because what could she say? That she had been one of those people? That she had given up on her own daughter years ago? She stood there in silence, watching Navari's face glow with happiness. And for the first time in a very long time, Empress Ilthera of the Valari Empire felt ashamed. Not of her daughter, of herself. The night was quiet on the royal ship. All the diplomats had returned to their quarters. The guards stood silent at their posts. The engines hummed softly as the vessel floated above the Earth City. But Empress Ilthera could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The image of her daughter's smile kept playing in her mind, over and over again. That beautiful, genuine smile that she had not seen in so many years. A human made her smile. A simple waiter with no title and no power. He had done in 5 minutes what Ilthera had failed to do in 17 cycles. The Empress pushed the blankets aside and stood up. She walked to the window and looked down at the Earth City below. Lights twinkled everywhere, like stars had fallen from the sky. Humans moved through the streets even at this late hour. Always moving, always busy, always alive. What strange creatures they were. Ilthera pressed a button on her wall. A moment later, her chief advisor appeared at the door. His name was High Counselor Theron. He was old and wise and had served the royal family for 60 cycles. "Your Majesty?" Theron bowed deeply. "Is something wrong?" "I need information," Ilthera said. "About humans? About their culture?" Theron looked confused. "We have extensive files on human society, Your Majesty. Politics, military strength, economic systems. No." Ilthera turned to face him. "I want to know how they treat their disabled." The confusion on Theron's face deepened. "There. Disabled?" "Yes. Those who are born imperfect. Those who cannot walk or see or hear. What do humans do with them?" Theron was silent for a moment. This was not the kind of question he expected from his Empress. But he was a good advisor. He did not question her reasons. "I will gather the information immediately, Your Majesty." 2 hours later, Ilthera sat in her private study. Holographic screens floated around her, displaying images and videos and documents. Theron stood nearby, explaining what she was seeing. "Humans have a very different approach than we do," he said carefully. He knew this was a sensitive topic. They do not believe that physical imperfection determines worth. Ilthera leaned forward. Explain. They build accommodations for their disabled. Theron gestured at a screen showing humans in wheeled chairs moving through a building. These are called ramps. They allow those who cannot walk to access any building. Another screen showed hands moving in complex patterns. This is called sign language. Humans who cannot hear communicate using their hands. There are many versions of this language around their world. Another screen showed humans racing in specialized chairs. Their arms pumped powerfully as they raced around the track. They have created entire sporting events for their disabled. These are considered just as honorable as any other competition. Ilthera watched in silence. Her face showed no emotion, but inside, her mind was racing. Theron continued. Perhaps most remarkable, Your Majesty, is that humans have elected leaders who use wheeled chairs. They have celebrated artists who cannot see. They have honored scientists who cannot move their bodies. The advisor pulled up an image of a human male in a complex wheeled chair. His body was thin and twisted, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. This man was considered one of the greatest scientists in human history, Theron said. He could not walk. He could barely move. Near the end of his life, he could not even speak without a machine. And yet, humans treated him as a genius. They listened to his ideas. They respected his mind. Ilthera stared at the image. They did not hide him away? No, Your Majesty. They celebrated him. They made documentaries about his life. Children learned about him in schools. He was famous across their entire world. The Empress sat back in her chair. Her hands were trembling slightly. She clasped them together to hide the shaking. Why? She asked quietly. Why would they treat such a person with respect? He was broken, defective. By our standards, he should have been hidden from public view. Theron hesitated. He was walking on dangerous ground now. Humans believe that a person's worth comes from their mind and their heart, not their body. They see disability as a challenge to overcome, not a reason for shame. Some of their cultures even believe that overcoming such challenges makes a person stronger and more admirable. Ilthera closed her eyes. She thought about Navari, her beautiful, brilliant daughter who could speak 6 languages and solve complex mathematics in her head. Her daughter who had been locked away for years because her legs did not work. There is more, Your Majesty. Theron's voice was gentle now. He could see the effect this information was having on his Empress. Humans have laws that protect their disabled. They call them accessibility rights. These laws require buildings, transportation, and workplaces to accommodate people with disabilities. Failing to do so is considered discrimination. Discrimination, Ilthera repeated the word. It felt strange on her tongue. Yes, treating someone poorly because of their physical condition is considered wrong, immoral. In some places, it is even criminal. The Empress opened her eyes. Tears were forming there, something that had not happened since her coronation day. She had been trained from birth to never show weakness, never show emotion. And yet, here she was, crying in front of her advisor. We have been wrong, she whispered. Theron said nothing. It was not his place to agree or disagree with such a statement. For thousands of cycles, we have hidden our children away. We have treated them like shameful secrets. We have told them they were worthless because their bodies were not perfect. Ilthera's voice cracked. And these humans? These primitive, emotional creatures? They build ramps. She stood up suddenly. The holographic screen scattered around her. They build ramps, Theron. They create entire languages so that no one is left out of conversation. They make sports so that everyone can compete. They celebrate minds even when bodies fail. The tears were falling freely now. The Empress of the Valari, ruler of 40 star systems, was weeping like a child. And I put my daughter in the corner and told her to be invisible. She covered her face with her hands. The sob shook her entire body. All the years of holding back emotion broke through like water bursting through a dam. Thurin watched in stunned silence. In 60 cycles of service, he had never seen the Empress cry. He did not know what to do. Finally, Ilthra lowered her hands. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her perfect makeup was ruined. But there was something new in her expression. Something that looked almost like determination. "That human waiter," she said. "The one who danced with Navari. I want to speak with him." Theron bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty. When would you like? Tomorrow." First thing in the morning, Ilthra walked to the window again. The Earth sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I have questions for him. Questions that I think only a human can answer." She pressed her hand against the glass. Down below, the human city was waking up. People were starting their day, going about their lives, completely unaware that an Empress was watching them. "Such strange creatures," Ilthra murmured. "They do not even know how extraordinary they are." David Park was sitting on a plastic crate in the service corridor, eating a ham sandwich, when the Empress of the Valari found him. He did not see her at first. He was too focused on his lunch. The morning had been exhausting. 50 tables to set up. 300 place settings to arrange. 2 alien ambassadors who complained about the temperature of their water. All before noon. So when a shadow fell over him, David just assumed it was his manager coming to give him more work. "Hey, Mike, give me 5 more minutes," he said without looking up. "I have not eaten since..." He stopped. The feet in front of him were not wearing staff shoes. They were wearing elegant silver slippers that seemed to float slightly above the ground. David looked up slowly. His sandwich fell from his hands. Empress Ilthra stood before him. She was even more impressive up close. Her silver hair floated around her face like it was underwater. Her eyes were the color of deep space. She wore a simple gown today, but it still probably cost more than David would earn in his entire lifetime. 2 guards stood behind her. Their weapons were not drawn, but their hands were close. David scrambled to his feet. "Your Majesty, I'm so sorry." "I did not know." Ilthra raised a hand. "Please, sit." David blinked. "Sit?" "Yes, sit." The Empress looked around the small corridor. Then, to David's complete shock, she lowered herself onto another plastic crate beside him. Her magnificent gown pooled on the dirty floor. Her guards looked horrified but said nothing. David sat back down very slowly. His heart was pounding so hard, he was sure she could hear it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The Empress stared at the wall. David stared at the Empress. His sandwich lay forgotten on the ground between them. Finally, Ilthra turned to look at him. "Why did you dance with her?" David swallowed hard. "Your Majesty?" "My daughter. Last night. You risked everything to dance with her. I want to know why." David thought about the question. He thought about lying, about giving some diplomatic answer that would keep him out of trouble. But looking into the Empress's eyes, he could see that she wanted the truth. She needed it. "Because she looked lonely," he said simply. Ilthra tilted her head. "Lonely?" "Yeah. She was sitting there all by herself, hidden behind that plant. And she was watching everyone else have fun, and she looked so sad. Like she had already decided that she did not belong." David picked up his sandwich, brushed off the dirt, and took a bite. He was still nervous, but talking about this felt natural somehow. "I know that look," he continued chewing. "I used to have that look. In school, I was the weird kid. Too tall, too skinny, bad at sports. I spent a lot of dances sitting in corners, watching everyone else have fun." Ilthra listened without interrupting. Her face was unreadable. "One time, when I was 15, there was this girl. Her name was Jessica. She was popular and pretty and way out of my league. But she came over to where I was sitting and asked me to dance. David smiled at the memory. I told her I could not dance. She said it did not matter. She just wanted me to feel included. He shrugged. That moment changed my life. Not because anything romantic happened. It did not. But because someone saw me. Really saw me. And they decided I was worth 5 minutes of their time. David looked at the Empress. That is why I danced with your daughter. Because she deserved to feel seen. Everyone does. Ilthera was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. You risked a diplomatic incident. My guards could have killed you. David nodded. Yeah, I know. And you did it anyway? For a stranger? For a girl you did not even know? She is not a stranger anymore. David smiled. Now she is my friend. We have a dance date tonight, actually. The Empress stared at him. In her entire life, no one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever been so casual, so honest, so completely unafraid. You humans are very strange, she said finally. David laughed. We get that a lot. Another silence fell between them. But this one felt more comfortable. Less like an interrogation and more like a conversation. Can I ask you something? David said. Ilthera nodded. Why was she hidden like that? At the banquet, I mean. She was tucked away like someone did not want people to see her. The Empress flinched. It was a tiny movement, barely visible, but David caught it. In my culture, Ilthera said slowly, physical perfection is everything. If you are born with a defect, if your body is not whole, you are considered less than others, shameful, a burden. David's eyes widened. So you hide them? Yes, we hide them. We keep them away from public view. We tell ourselves it is for their protection. But really, Ilthera's voice dropped to a whisper. Really, we are protecting ourselves. From embarrassment. From judgment. From having to admit that our families are not perfect. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly. I have hidden Nivari for 17 cycles. Since she was a small child, I told myself it was the right thing to do. I told myself I was protecting her from cruel words and harsh stares. A single tear rolled down her cheek. But I was not protecting her. I was punishing her. For something she could not control. David set down his sandwich. He looked at this powerful alien Empress, this ruler of worlds. And he saw something he recognized. Guilt. Regret. The desperate wish to go back and do things differently. You cannot change the past, he said gently. But you can change the future. Ilthera looked up at him. How? By being different. By doing better. By letting Nivari live her life instead of hiding her from it. David leaned forward. She is amazing, you know. We talked for a while after the dance. She is smart and funny and kind. She has so much to offer the world. Your world. The Empress wiped her eyes. You learned all that in one evening? I learned it in one dance. David smiled. That is the thing about seeing people. Really seeing them. You learn who they are pretty quickly. Ilthera sat in silence, processing his words. The guards behind her exchanged confused glances. They had never seen their Empress have a conversation like this. Sitting on a crate. Crying in front of a servant. Being lectured by a human. But maybe that was exactly what she needed. I do not know how to change, Ilthera admitted. I have been this way my entire life. My people have been this way for thousands of cycles. David stood up and brushed crumbs from his uniform. That is okay. Change is hard. But it starts with one step. Or in this case, one dance. He extended his hand to help the Empress up. She stared at it for a moment, then took it. Her cool fingers wrapped around his warm ones, and he pulled her gently to her feet. "Thank you," Ilthra said. The words felt strange in her mouth. She was not used to thanking servants. David grinned. "Thank me by letting Navari come to the dance floor tonight. Not hidden in a corner. Right in the middle, where everyone can see her." The Empress hesitated. Old instincts screamed at her to refuse. To protect the royal image. To maintain the appearance of perfection. But then she remembered her daughter's smile. That beautiful, genuine, heartbreaking smile. "All right," she said quietly. "Tonight, my daughter dances in the center of the room." David's grin grew even wider. "Now you are getting it, Your Majesty." He gave her a casual bow, nothing like the formal gestures she was used to, picked up his tray, and walked back toward the kitchen. Just before he disappeared around the corner, he turned and called back. "Oh, and Your Majesty?" Ilthra looked at him. "Maybe you should dance too. You look like you could use some fun." Then he was gone, leaving the Empress of the Valari standing alone in a service corridor, wondering how a human with a sandwich had just changed everything she believed about herself. 3 years had passed since the night that changed everything. On the Valari homeworld, the capital city gleamed under the light of 2 suns. The great Senate building rose from the center like a crystal mountain. Today, its grand chamber was packed with thousands of Valari citizens. They had come to witness history. Princess Navari floated to the center of the stage in her hover chair. She was 20 cycles old now. Her silver hair was braided with golden threads. Her gown was the color of sunrise. On her face was the same confident smile that had appeared 3 years ago on a dance floor on Earth. In the arms of a human waiter, she had not stopped smiling since. The crowd fell silent as Navari activated her microphone. Thousands of black eyes fixed on her. Some looked curious. Some looked hostile. And some, especially the younger ones, looked hopeful. "My fellow Valari," Navari began. Her voice was strong and clear. "I stand before you today as proof that change is possible." Behind her, holographic images appeared. Pictures of ramps being built into ancient buildings. Videos of Valari children learning sign language. Images of the new accessibility centers opening across the empire. 3 years ago, I was hidden. I was told that my broken legs made me worthless. I was kept in the shadows because my existence was considered shameful. Navari paused. But I was not worthless. I was never worthless. And neither is anyone else in this empire who was born different. In the front row, Empress Ilthra watched her daughter with tears in her eyes. She had cried more in the past 3 years than in her entire life before. But these were good tears. Proud tears. So much had changed since that night on Earth. The day after her conversation with David, Ilthra had done something unprecedented. She brought Navari to the center of the dance floor, just as the human had suggested. She stood beside her daughter and announced to the entire gathering that she was proud of her, that she had been wrong to hide her, that the Valari must change. The scandal was enormous. Half the Senate demanded her resignation. Ancient families called her a traitor to tradition. There were protests in the streets, but there was also support. Parents of disabled children sent messages thanking her. Young people organized rallies calling for change. Scientists and doctors came forward with new technologies and treatments that have been suppressed for centuries. And slowly, painfully, the empire began to transform. The first change was the abolition of the Perfection Edicts. These ancient laws had mandated the hiding of disabled citizens for over 5,000 cycles. Striking them down took months of political battles. Ilthra had to use every bit of her power and influence. But in the end, the laws fell. The second change was the creation of the Navari Initiative. Named after the princess herself, this program provided resources, technology, and support for all Valari citizens with disabilities. Hover chairs became available to anyone who needed them, not just the wealthy. Buildings were retrofitted with ramps and lifts. Schools began teaching sign language as a standard subject. The third change was the hardest of all. It was the change in how people thought. This was still ongoing. Thousands of cycles of prejudice did not disappear overnight. There were still cruel words. There were still hostile stares. There were still families who hid their children in shame. But every day, things got a little better. Every day, more people opened their minds. Every day, the old ways lost a little more power. And it had all started with a dance dot in the Senate chamber. Navari was finishing her speech. "I want to thank the person who started this revolution," she said. He was not a politician. He was not a leader. He was just a human who worked at a party. But he saw me when no one else did. He treated me like I was worth something when everyone else had given up. And he taught me that true strength comes not from perfect bodies, but from open hearts. She paused and smiled. "His name is David Park, and today I am honored to call him my friend." In the back of the chamber, a door opened. A human male walked in. He was older now, his dark hair showing streaks of gray. But his smile was the same, warm and kind and completely without fear. David walked down the central aisle. Valari citizens turned to stare. Many had never seen a human in person before. He was shorter than them, softer than them, so completely alien. And yet he walked through their midst like he belonged there. When he reached the stage, Navari floated down to meet him. She reached out and took his hand. "Hey, partner," David said. "Ready for another dance?" Navari laughed. "Always." The music started. It was the same song from that first night, the old Earth song about love and starlight. David lifted Navari from her chair, just like he had done 3 years ago. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and they began to dance. The Senate chamber had never seen anything like it. A human and a Valari princess spinning together on the sacred floor where laws were made and empires were governed. Her useless legs dangling, his feet moving for both of them. Two people from different worlds, connected by something stronger than politics or tradition. At first, the chamber was silent. The older senators watched with disapproval. The traditionalists muttered about disgrace. But then, something amazing happened. A young Valari girl in the audience began to applaud. She was perhaps 10 cycles old, sitting in a hover chair just like Navari's. Her legs did not work. Her family had almost left her at home today, afraid of the stairs. But seeing the princess dance, seeing her smile, seeing her be celebrated instead of hidden, it gave the girl courage. She clapped her hands together, the sound echoing through the chamber. Others joined her. A young man with one arm, an elderly woman who was blind, parents holding children who were different. One by one, they began to applaud. The sound grew. It spread through the chamber like a wave. Soon, thousands of Valari were clapping and cheering. Even some of the old senators joined in, their prejudices crumbling in the face of such pure joy. Empress Ilthera rose from her seat. She walked to the stage and stood beside her daughter and the human waiter. She looked out at her people and spoke. "This is our future," she said. "Not perfection, not hiding, but acceptance, courage, love." She put her hand on Navari's shoulder. "My daughter taught me this, and a human who was kind enough to see what I could not." The applause grew even louder. Years later, historians would call this the Day of Change. They would write about how the Valari Empire transformed from a society of rigid perfection to one of acceptance and support. They would analyze the political movements, the social shifts, the economic impacts, but they would always come back to the same beginning. A lonely princess at a party, a waiter with a kind heart, a dance that should not have happened. David, Park never became famous on Earth. He returned to his normal life after the summit ended. He continued working in service jobs. He got married, had children, grew old. He never sought attention for what he had done. When journalists finally tracked him down years later, asking about his role in changing an alien civilization, he seemed genuinely confused. "I just asked a girl to dance," he said, shrugging. Anyone would have done it. But that was the thing about humans. The thing that made them special. The thing that alien species across the galaxy would come to admire and fear in equal measure. They did not know how. Extraordinary, they're ordinary. Kindness was, when Empress Ilthera wrote her memoirs near the end of her life. She dedicated an entire chapter to that night at the summit. She titled it simply, "The Waiter Who Moved Worlds." In the final paragraph she wrote, "I conquered star systems. I commanded fleets of 1,000 ships. I held the fate of billions in my hands. I thought that was power. I thought that was strength. But it took a human with a ham sandwich to teach me what true strength looks like. It looks like kindness. It looks like courage. It looks like seeing someone who is broken and deciding they are worth your time anyway." David Park never knew he changed the galaxy. He just thought he was being nice. And perhaps that is the most human thing of all. On Earth, in a small apartment in New Geneva, an old man named David sat in a comfortable chair, reading a book. His wife had passed away last year. His children had grown and moved away. He was alone now, but not lonely. He had his memories. He had his peace. On his wall hung a single photograph. It showed a young man dancing with an alien princess, her silver hair flying, her face lit up with joy. Below, it was a handwritten note in elegant alien script. It said, "Thank you for seeing me. Love, Navari." David smiled at the picture, the same warm smile he'd always had. Then he turned the page of his book and continued reading. Outside his window, the stars were coming out. Somewhere among them, an empire was changing. People were learning to be kind. Children who would have been hidden were being celebrated. Instead, all because a waiter asked a girl to dance. And that is the power of ordinary human kindness. It does not seem like much. Just a small gesture. A moment of courage. A decision to see someone who is invisible. But sometimes, that is enough to move worlds.